we were talking about the parochos yesterday, last time. It says, "Kol kelim sheyu b'mikdash sheyu lahem shneim u'shlishiyim. Shemi tamu arishonim yaviu ashneim tachtihen." There were spares. So if something gets contaminated, they could bring a third one. An extra menorah just in case the menorah got contaminated. What were they doing to the menorah? I don't know, but there was 3 of them. That's what the Mishneh says in Chagig. I'm going to put this on the screen for the good of those joining us at home. Huh, look at that. Wow, it opened up to the exact page. And then it says, Zeh hamunel ma'aseh bigdei kuna, osek ba'chanat bigdei kohanim hedyotot. He works preparing garments for ordinary kohanim, uvigdei kohen gadol, and the garments for kohen gadol, uvari gatan, and in weaving them. Anybody here ever weave anything or use a loom? I made a mistake last week. I have to correct it. It says that I said that they use 72 looms. Al shivim u'shnayim nirin haitan ne'areget. No, it means 72 of the type of strands that go this way. You ever see how a loom works? There's a guy in the old city who does it still. Makes designer talis in that way. So I forget which one's the woof and which is the other one because I've never done it. There's the warp, woof and the warp. So it means 72 in one of the directions. I forget which one's chassis. Whichever one is chassis. Chassis and arif means crisscrossed. I guess we're not weavers, so we don't know. But it means that it's quite impressive because these things were really long. We're going to see that a lot of these garments are fantastically long. Like we're going to see how long the avnate was. The avnate was just a long piece of cloth. So was the mitznefet. One long piece of cloth. These things were quite long, and they couldn't be sewn together from smaller pieces. You guys going to eat anything? Want anything? Please. Yeah. Oh, you should have a drink. Okay. Don't let me deprive you of anything. Okay. And if we need something else, try us. We might have something else here. Now we're going to start the 8th parak. It also says here, umitachat yodo na'asa. It doesn't mean there's one fellow who is making every single garment, right? It means he had people working for him, like we said before. Vilishkaha italo b'mikdash, and he had his own office in the temple. So let's look at this. There's some nice illustrations they have here, showing you the difference. Although I thought this is kind of a funny picture that I have. Shows the different opinions about how the Kohanim cover their heads with this piece of cloth. The Kohen they used to demonstrate it has something that obviously no Kohen could have, which is payas. You see that? What's wrong with a Kohen having payas? The Kohen is not allowed to have more than 30 days hair growth on his head. Payas is hair of the head. So anybody is a Kohen. We don't have a Kohen here, but I like surprising Kohanim. I ask him if I ever see a Kohen with longer payas, I'd say, aren't you looking forward to cutting off your payas? Because if you want to serve in the temple, you cannot have long payas. So yeah, but it's such a Jewish thing. There's a Rabbi Azariah Ariel, who's one of the children of Rabbi Yisrael Ariel in the Old City. He's a Rav. He teaches in the yeshivas there. And he has a mimer. I think he might have published it recently. I saw it before he published it. He was basically showing how Ikar Adin, you're not supposed to have longer payas if you want to be a Kohen in the base of HaMikdash. Even though there's some Achronim who are scandalized by the thought, meaning we're going to have to cut off a payas if we want to serve in the temple. And the answer is yes. They basically came with justification saying, because the Rambam says that a regular person could go into the Azara, or at least the Ezras Nashim, with long hair as long as it's styled, so too, a Kohen can avoid this biblical prohibition if his payas are curled back or whatever, made to look nice. But the Rambam was the first one who introduced this whole idea that a regular person needs a haircut also to go into the base of Mikdash, and then said, but it's not exactly like the din of a Kohen who has to have short hair. A regular Jew can just style his hair and that'd be good enough. So it seems really clear. If you're going to ask, wait a minute, so in the olden days, did all the from Jews who wanted to have payas, they couldn't serve in the temple? And the answer is yes. The idea that Jews should grow their payas extra long is a late Kabbalistic practice. Throughout the Rishonim and the Gonim, the discussion in the Gemara is the minimum number of hairs, the minimum length of those hairs, and the area under which we have this prohibition of rounding the head. Hakafat Rosh. Right, Shmuel? Mm-hmm. So Hakafat Rosh is always a question of minimums. The idea that, just grow it all out and don't touch it, like the Shulchan Aruch says. Shulchan Aruch basically skips the entire Talmudic and medieval discussion, right? You could find the Rishonim, they're talking about all the intricacies, the minimum number of hairs, the length of the hairs, the area that needs to be kept. What does the Shulchan Aruch summarize? Does he give any of opinions or say what to do? The Shulchan Aruch famously says, this whole area, lo tigabo yad, quoting a biblical pasuk, dramatic effect, I guess, hyperbole. Loti gabel yad, just don't touch it. Just let your payas grow. The idea of longer payas is basically from those generations, Kabbalistic generations, of growing the payas out. You're saying, yeah, but they're Yemenites. Even the Yemenites had it, yes. So the Yemenites picked up a lot of Kabbalistic customs later in history. And not every Yemenite had payas. And not every Jewish sage, Rabbi Avi Yosef and his children point this out. Doesn't mean every Sephardic rabbi had long payas. Doesn't mean every Litvish rabbi had long payas. Those who chose to do so, specifically Hasidim, did it, and others. But the idea that people grow out their payas is very new in Jewish history. You would not have seen Jews in Second Temple times or Mishneh times with exaggerated payas. No one had thought of it yet. So to draw a Kohen like this is aside from the lack of historical authenticity, it's also not going to be that case. The Beis Din of Kohanim is going to make sure that their Kohanim don't have this much hair on their heads. Basically, 30 days growth is the maximum Kohen is allowed to have. Now, how long does it? How if you would shave a man's head, how long would his hair be after a month? Those hairs, I don't know. You can't get a centimeter even. You can get right. A certain amount, but hair grows. Everybody's hair grows at a different rate, but you could see it's usually basically Kohanim were getting buzz cuts like we saw before. The ideal haircut for a Kohen Gadol seems to be, like the Rambam says, a nice buzz cut. Not shave his head bald, because then he doesn't have hair at all. That's ugly. It means very short. Okay, so let's see this halacha. It says Bigdei Kunash Shlosha Minim, Bigdei Kohen Edyot, Uvigdei Zahav, Uvigdei Lavan. Bigdei Kohen Edyot means an ordinary Kohen's outfit. Bigdei Zahav and Bigdei Lavan are specifically for the Kohen Gadol. Bigdei Kohen Edyot Haim Arba Akelim. Kutonet, it shouldn't be spelled Vav, by the way, even though the Machon Shilo has it. Umichnasayim, U'avneit Umikba'at. Kutonet means basically his cloak or his robe. That's the main thing he wears. Michnasayim is pants, and we're going to see they're not exactly like the pants we have. They're sort of underpants, even though we're going to see that they go very high. They go well above the waist. The avneit is basically a belt. Umikba'at. Mikba'at, the shorish is Gimel Bet Ayin, and it looks like a hill. See, the shorish it means Geva is a hill, right? Or Giv'ah, and it looks like Kova. Gimel and Kaf are cognates, so Mikba'at has a cognate root from the word as a hat. So this is his headgear. Varbatan shel pishtin. They're all made of linen. Livanim, pishtan livanim. They're all white. It means you don't color linen. Usually, if anything linen in the temple and in the Bible is kept white. V'chutan kaful shisha. The thread is sixfold. Okay, so it says they actually, Rambam was going to say later, that's the word sheish. It's called sheish. There's a word for linen, but it also alludes to the fact that the thread is sixfold. V'avneit levado rakum b'tzemer. Only the avneit actually is woven with wool. Okay, good. Bigdei zahav, hein bigdei kohen gadol, v'heim shmona kelim. There are eight garments that the kohen gadol wears. Harba'a shel kol kohen, the four that an ordinary kohen wears. In addition, ume'il. Meal is a coat, so he's wearing two layers. This is apparently the meal we're going to see is made out of wool, entirely of tcheles. So I guess it's better to be kohen gadol because you're wearing another layer and an even warmer layer. We'ipud, we'ifod. Why he said here ipud? That's interesting. Oh, he spells ephod malay in the Machon Shilo. You guys see ephod throughout the Torah. I wouldn't have a havmi. I would always read it ephod, but he actually wrote it with a yud here. Okay, interesting. Mechoshen b'tzitz. An ephod is basically an apron, a fancy apron, by the way, not like a house apron. And the choshen is the breastplate that has all the gemstones in it, and the tzitz. The tzitz is, what's the fanciest word you could find for a diadem? It's a crown-like object. It doesn't go entirely around the head.
Lamina.
What?
Lamina.
Lamina?
I think
Lamina.
in English.
Tiaras are mostly for women. Okay, but this basically you could say it's only the front side of the head. It doesn't go all the way around. So how does it stay on his head then? There's a thing of tcheles, yeah. There's a string that he uses to tie it on. Umitznefet ha-murabba Aaron. It says Aaron's supposed to have a mitznefet. What the Rambam called here. Earlier said there's a mikba'at, so the mikba'at is shared by the Kohanim. Okay. Hamurabba Aaron, hi ha-mikba'at hamurabba vanav. Mitznefet and the mikba'at that the Kohen Gadol and the ordinary Kohanim is the same thing. Ela shekohen gadol tzonef ba k'moshe lofeif ala shever. The Kohen Gadol wraps it around, said tzonef, a mitznefet, wraps it around as though if a person had a broken arm, so he's fully enwrapping it all around, like in this picture. Uvanav tzonafim ba kichova, sorry, and his children, his regular quantum, wrap it as though it's a hat. Lofichach nikret mikbat, because it's hat-like, it's called a mikbat. So they have the picture here. Basically, everybody agrees that the Kohen Gadol's mitznefet is wrapped well on his head. It basically goes low, so it covers the ears. Okay, why you want to wrap it fully around the head? So it goes below the ears. Whereas a mikbat could look like this. To show you Ravid and the Rambam's opinions, they basically wrap it only around the crown of the head. So it's the same thing. It's the same material. It just depends. Your rank basically says how you wrap it around your head. Okay, if you're a Kohen. Very interesting. You can see what does the Ravid say here. You guys have the Ravid? Not your editions? It's a shame. Makbili doesn't have the Ravid there. I'll read you what Ravid says. On Yomer, Ein Maaseu Shel Zeh K'Maaseu Shel Zeh. I don't think they're exactly the same thing. Mitznefet Aroch Harbe. The Korechoto Krichot Harbe Kichrichot HaYishmelim. Mitznefet, the thing that Kohen Gadol wears, is much longer. Aroch Harbe, and he does many enwrappings like the Ishmaelites do. Okay? The turban, basically. The mikbat is very hat-like. It means it comes to a point. So it'd be a lot less material involved there. That's why they show this. This shows the fellow with the hat on. That's more of a Ravid style. Okay. So what's going to be the hachra here? Anybody know? Okay. There's also here, the question is, how different was the avnit of a Kohen Gadol? It says, L'das smag loya kol evdel ben avnit Kohen Gadol avnit Kohen Hedyot. There are some who say that the avnit, they wear different avnitim. To what extent, by the way, did they make an avnit look nice? There's one in the picture at the end of here. It shows an avnit with what? With embroidery. What they do? And embroidered lines on this avnit. Who said to do such a thing? Or is that just something you could do to make it look nice? See that? I don't know. So there are those who say the avnit of the Kohen Gadol wasn't exactly that of the avnit of a regular Kohen, and some say it must have been the same. Here, the Rambam is basically saying that the avnit is identical. That a Kohen Gadol, when he dressed up, he could have just taken any avnit from, I guess, the machsan, wherever it is there. We're going to see the chalonot, the windows, so to speak, where they kept these extra garments. Bigdei Lavan, Heim Arba Klim She Mishamesh Bahen Kohen Gadol B'Yom HaKippurim. The Bigdei Lavan are the four garments that the Kohen Gadol wears on Yom HaKippurim. He doesn't dress like an ordinary Kohen. Doesn't dress like himself normally. He wears the Bigdei Lavan. By the way, why does he wear this? At what point in the service does he wear the so-called Bigdei Lavan? When he enters the Kodesh Kodeshim. So, technically speaking, he has to. It says in the Torah, right? There's something they say about the avodah. It says in the Torah he wears Vasha Kohen Midovad Mixzevad Basha with Saro. So he wears these linen garments, and it describes how he goes into the Kodesh Kodeshim and does his service, and afterwards he puts his regular garments back on. But we know that he actually wore them twice that day, even though in the Torah it only seems to mention once. Well, technically speaking, the second time he's wearing them is not to perform a commandment, but why? Remember, Yom Kippur. Why does the Kohen Gadol put his white garments back on? Because he has to remove what he put into the Kodesh Kodeshim. He can't just leave it there on the floor. He left an incense pan on the floor. So he has to go back into the Kodesh Kodeshim to retrieve it. So that's basically why he puts his white garments on again. So it means he's going to be changing his clothes quite often. But if it was somehow, I don't know, if they did that whole thing like they say, even though this is not in Shas, they tied a golden chain around him in case he would collapse in the Kodesh Kodeshim so they could pull him out. Correct? Yeah, that must have complicated things. Did they actually say that ever happened in history? I think that's the Zohar says it. I don't think it's Chazal that say that. Either way, if they had done such a thing with the incense pan, then it would have been easier. He wouldn't have to go back in. He could just pull it out, but that's not derech kavod at all. Okay, everything you have to do with your right hand. Everything that's done in the mikdash should be done derech kavod. So he wears these garments twice on Yom Kippur. Kutonet u'michnasayim v'avnit u'mitznefet. Wait a minute. So it seems to be the same things that a regular Kohen wears. It's a cloak or the robe. It's the pants. It's the avneit. It's mitznefet. So what's different here according to the Rambam? Must be the avneit. V'arbatam levanin. They're all white. Normally an avneit is made out of tzemer, so it has colors to it. Here it's all white. V'chutan kaful shisha. Once again, 6-stranded. Umina pishtan levadohem. They're entirely out of linen, which means that once a year the Kohen Gadol wears an avneit that's linen, not one that's embroidered. So that's how you know he looks different than a regular Kohen. He had 2 of these kutonets on Yom HaKippurim. Achat lovsha b'shachar, one he would wear in the morning. V'achat ben arbaim, one for the afternoon. Ushtem b'shloshim moneh mishel hekdesh. They were bought with 30 moneh, which is quite a lot of money that comes from the funds of hekdesh. V'imratzah losif mosif mishelo. If he wants to make them more expensive, he can use his own money to do that. Umakdisha tosevet, but he first has to dedicate this extra money to the temple. V'achakach oseba hakutonot, and afterwards he makes these garments. And we're going to see that he only wore them once. Each one of these garments is worn once, and then it's put away forever. So it's a one-time garment. It seems for something that's chad pami and white, it's quite expensive. Bigdei kuna mitzvatan shiu chadashim naim umishulashim. What does mishulashim mean here? Interesting word. Anybody know? On Shabbos. No. Good try. Oh, sorry, or Mishul Shalim. Sorry, it should be Mishul Shalim. They say it better. I'm reading you once again without the dots here and the extra vavs that Machon Amri loves to put in. It says that the new nice and Mishul Shalim means hanging down. It used to be that the sign of someone who was wealthy and important was that his garments nearly dragged along the floor. And if you're really wealthy, you have a cape, right? What is it? The Queen of England gets married, so what does she have? She has a super long train on her wedding dress that takes like just 8 other girls to like carry it for her.
Oh, that's what seat are.
Seat are supposed to be. So Chazal say, if you have nothing, if you're so poor you don't have Shabbos clothes, what do? You let your tallis down on Shabbos. It looks more important if you have clothes that have to be dragged along the floor. That's what it means, long. That's by the way, it's more dignified for a Bas Yisrael, who's basically every Ben Yisrael has a din of a prince, okay, and every Bas Yisrael has a din of a princess, which means it's more nice to have to tell people wearing a long skirt isn't saying about an imposition about being, trying to, mar someone's looks or turn them into a potato sack. It's more dignified to have a long skirt. It's also dignified for men, by the way. I remember my friend who became sort of Hasidish pointed this out. Why don't Hasidim wear coats? He says, why are you walking around with a short jacket or a sweater and pants? Who said pants are even modest for men? You should wear long clothes. It's the more dignified way of doing it, especially on Shabbos and Yontif. Okay, or things to think about. Okay, kederech bigdei hagdolim. Gedolim in this case means important people. Normally, Chazal and the Rambam equate, for better or for worse, importance with wealth. Okay, if you're someone important, you're probably wealthy, and you probably wear clothes that hang down. Shneimar lechavod u'tifaret. Hayumitush tashim. Oh man, they're already getting what? Dirty? O mikoraim, where they're getting ripped up. O arukim yeter al midato, where he picked garments that are too long for him. O kitzarim b'chot midato, they're too short, they don't fit him. O shesilkan be'avneit v'avad, he basically held them up. Why? Sometimes you have suspenders or you tighten your belt, and that's what holds them on better. He's using the avneit for that purpose. V'avad avodato psula, so his service is disqualified. He offered this korban, it doesn't count. Offered the korban tamid, so I guess you have to find a new lamb, do it again by a kohen who's dressed properly. Hayu mishuchakim. What's that mean? That means they're worn out. Not that they're ripped, but they're just worn out. Clothes used to wear out all the time. You ever hear? Thank God we live in nowadays where we have mass-produced clothing. You don't see, thank God, anybody walking around with patched clothes. Patched clothes, correct? Thank God we're much wealthier than people were in the olden days. In the olden days, you wore a shirt at the beginning of the winter. You had, 2 shirts and a Shabbos shirt maybe, if you were doing well. And by the end of the season, your shirts are getting worn out. And if you're poor, so you have to patch them up. And if not, you get some new ones for the next season. But this is, thank God, we don't have this mishuchakim, worn out clothing. He used his avneit to hold them up so much that eventually it actually looks like they fit. He got away with it; they could pass. Zavad, and he did the service. Avodato kishera, very good. Now, who makes nowadays the Machon HaMikdash is making garments. Does anybody here have a friend who's a kohen who tried out, went for fitting? No? Okay, there were prominent kohanim. I remember in the olden days, they had a thing, was in the newspapers. Rav Riskin went and Rabbi Nachman Kahana went to get tried out, and you saw them getting fitted for a big day kahuna. Very interesting. And there are, when they have these tirgulim now, they do it on a yearly basis. Anybody go to that Nisuch HaMayim thing they did on Tuesday last week? Tirgul Nisu Chamaim. Okay. Has anybody here gone to Tirgul Korban Pesach that they've done a few years now? You know what I'm talking about? They do a whole demonstration. You know, a lot of celebrities have gone. I remember I met like 5 politicians in this small crowd at a place near Rabbi Bar-Hayim's house many years ago, before Pesach. It must have been 2014 or 2015. So they do is they get this mizbeach, like they get Kohanim all dressed up, and they actually slaughter a lamb and say, if this was a korban, here's how we'd catch the blood, and here's how we put the blood in the mizbeach, and here's how we dissect it, and put it on the spit and roast it. And there was only one Rav there who actually knew how to get inside a goat and start cutting it open and skinning it and doing everything that actually needs to be done. It was the same guy who teaches the Mohel, Rabbi Giyah. The Mohel teaches everybody else. Okay, so you should go see this. Kol beged mi bigdei kuna shena'asat soi ein milabdimoto. If it's gotten dirty or soiled in this case, from the word soah, they don't wash it. V'lo mechapsinoto. They don't try to do anything to clean it. Ella manicho liftilot v'lovesh chadashim. They just put aside. They're going to make wicks out of it. A lot of wicks. Okay, remember what? Can you use wool? So you can turn wool into wicks. Does wool work as a wick?
Semer Geffen.
You're supposed to, yeah, but that's Semer Geffen's more close to. That's cotton.
Right.
Semer Geffen is cotton, and there's no cotton in the temple. Cotton is basically what we use instead of linen nowadays. Linen you could use to make wicks for candles. Does wool work? Well, wool is not the best. Wick. Uvigdei kohen gadol shebalu gozinoton. The Kohen Gadol's outfit that got dirty or whatever, you can't use it anymore, they would put in Geniza. Uvigdei Lavan she'oved bahem b'yom hatzom, the ones, the white garments that we just said, that the Kohen Gadol wears on the fast day, eino oved bahem pam shniim shniya leolam, they'll never use them again. Ela nignazim b'makom she'yivshodotam sham. They have a hiding place. They just basically pick up the brick and put it under the floor forever. That's where they hide them. V'nicham sham. They masrim b'hanayan. You can't use them for hanaya ever again. Here's what we have. I forgot here. It says Likutei halachot. We've cited that a few times. Who wrote the Likutei halachot? Turns out it's the Chafetz Chaim. Why would the Chafetz Chaim wrote a book about what's going to be in the base of HaMikdash? Because the Chafetz Chaim encouraged people to learn Kachim and prepare for the advent of the Messiah. Chafetz Chaim said, who was it? He was the one who had a set of clothes ready to greet the Mashiach, wearing them. If only everybody were to have this practical approach to living a life of Torah, being able to meet the Messiah, keeping the halachas. The problem was, I think, where the Chafetz Chaim lived, most people didn't really take it seriously. Otherwise, they would have left Poland to begin with, right? So we could learn something. I'll read you what it says here. He says that Dafka kasher habeged hitlachlech bioter ad kedei kach shadam mitbayesh lamod kach b'fnei gedolim. Avalim lachlech me'at muter lechabeso. He holds that you could launder a little bit. Now, this is against what Rabbi Rabinovich is going to say. We're going to see that in a second when we get to the Chelis issue. Okay? Mechnesei Kohanim had yotim shebalu v'avnetehem hayusen mehen ptilot. So their pants and their avnate, they use them to make wicks. Umalikin behen b'mikdash b'simchat beis hashoeva. They would use them to light the torches at the Simchas beis hashoeva when they had to use a lot of light. Why? Is that the only time they need to make light in the temple?
No, it's every day. Right, the menorah, right?
Sort of. The menorah is 7 simple wicks in the room where no one's going to be. They lock up the temple at night. So in the Kodesh, that's where it's burning. You need a lot more light. The temple is normally closed at night. It's only at Simchas Beis HaShoeva that you actually have a night shift and people are actually coming to celebrate in the temple, like we saw last week and 2 weeks ago. So there, they didn't have stadium lights. They didn't have these new LEDs outside. They didn't have sodium vapor lights. How they light up the entire temple complex at night? They needed a lot of oil and a lot of wicks. Couldn't use a bonfire. Why can't you make a gigantic bonfire to light things? Or a torch to do that? Why can't you do that? What? No, because it's going to smoke up the place. Right? You make a bonfire here. You can use a bonfire to create light in a temple. Let's say you didn't light up the temple at night. Think back to your pictures of the second temple, the way it looked, the complex there, the Ezras Nashim.
The temple doesn't have a
lighting
place
system?
to light out the smoke, does it?
The temple is just open air.
Oh.
Talking about the temple courtyards.
The courtyards.
Let's say I needed to have. Let's look at the picture over here. To look at a picture some artist representation or thing like they have at the Israel Museum. What did the second temple look like with its courtyards? You just look at a basic picture there. So the Simchas Beis HaShoeva is going on in the Ezras Nashim, right? And there's a spillover crowd probably in the rest of Har Bayis. These are the only nights of the year where people are actually there at night. There's some Kohanim who are working at night in the temple. What are they doing? They're standing guards. They're walking around torches where they are. And there's some Levim outside at their posts. And there's a few Kohanim who are doing Hektar Chalavim. So they don't need a lot of light. They just take on, pieces of korban and put it on the fire. That's all they need. Now we're talking about huge crowds. There's a party going on. The Tanoim are there juggling knives and torches, right? It's the biggest party of the entire year. So how are you going to light the place? If you make gigantic bonfires on the floor of the temple, you're going to be smoking the place. Correct? Bonfires create a lot of smoke, especially if it's wood. If you want a big fire, not only that, it doesn't create the right type of light, it doesn't light things. So how do you illuminate a place at night? You make a lot of candles. You use gigantic candles. And what's a candle? It's a wick sitting in a bowl of oil. So you need a lot of those.
The bowl of oil is the nair.
Yeah, it's called the nair. It's called the lamp. And then there's a wick that comes out of the edge, right? You remember how these things work. You've seen pictures about how. Has anybody ever been in a place actually lit by lamp oil? Anybody ever hang out in a place or candlelight nowadays? Yeah, so sometimes here in Kochav Yaakov, we've had power outages. About once a day, the power goes out for a split second here in this yeshuv, every day. And, God willing, when winter happens and starts getting rainy and cold and everybody's running their heat or whatever, we have power outages all the time. It is not unheard of here in Kochav Yaakov that Shabbos starts with, right before Shabbos, power outage. Power goes out. Okay? So we have to actually have a candlelit Shabbos, or as I told the Rosh Hashiva's son, a romantic Shabbos. Okay? So you could get used to this. That's why they need so many wicks. They had a lot of candles going, or a lot of large candles. So to use one body of oil with many wicks in it, like as described in Chazal and Babem Malikin, and that's what they need. You couldn't just make a big fire. You couldn't just use torches to light the place. You need decent light. So what you do is candlelight. So that's what they're describing here. Okay. I also should have said this. We call it Simchas Beis HaShoeva, and the Rambam's version is She'uva. So it matches the same thing because the Gemara says Shoeva or Chashuva. She'uva is the same mishkal as Chashuva. She'uva or Chashuva means the drawn place. Okay. The Kutonek Kohanim Ad Yotot Shabalu Yusim Hem Ptilot Leminorat HaTamid. Oh, Leminorat Tamid. That's kind of strange. What do you guys hear? You have just Minorat Tamid? What do you have there? Minorat Tamid?
Lamnorat Tamid.
Lamnorah, comma Tamid. Okay. Because you can't have Minorah just without Tamid. Let me see here. I think there's something that doesn't sound right about this. Okay. I guess it means they always use this for the menorah. So that's what they're using. The menorah has, that's a daily mitzvah, but a lot less quantities than we need for this. Kol bigdei kohanim einan ba'im ela mishel tzibur. They have to come from public funds. V'achid sheitnadev beged mibidei kuna mosero tolat tzibur mutar. If he creates one himself, it's privately owned, so he has to give it over to the tzibur, and then it can be used in temple service. V'chein kol klei asharit v'atzei amaracha shemasaran yachil tzibur. Harei hen kshirim. They come from a private individual. What says wood, other clay sharet, whatever it is. Af kol korbanot tzibur she'adevotan yachim mishlok shirim uvad shim sarim tzibur. Even korbanot tzibur. Really, they should come from machatzit shekel. But this is another way out of it. Someone asks, if we don't have the mitzvah of machatzit shekel, how can Rambam say? Remember, the Rambam says the obligation or the commandment to collect half shekels toward the public sacrifices doesn't exist nowadays. Yet the Rambam says we're supposed to bring korban tamid nowadays. So where are you going to get the korban tamid from? So Rambam previously said you could use Bedek Habayit funds for that. Temple upkeep, which isn't chatzei shekel, it means private donations. Or you could just find someone who was going to give a lamb to the tzibur for that purpose. Bigdei kohanim medyotot hayu osin mehen machalatzot rabot. What does machalatzot rabot mean? In this case, it's like the kalim of the last parak. It means lots of spares. What does a machatzelet sometimes mean? Sometimes it means what do you call it? Mats. In this case, no, they're not making them out of mats. It means they're making a lot of spares. You can imagine, has anybody seen like doctors have this, and surgeons have the scrubs, like basically a whole outfit that they wear once. It's made out of synthetic material, and the women who work in delivery rooms have these. You know, you use it once and you throw it away. So basically, the Kohanim who are on duty are basically wearing these light linen garments. All it takes is a little blood to get splattered on them. What are the odds that a Kohen on duty is going to get splattered with blood?
Pretty likely.
Yeah. So you can understand they change out these things all the time. They can't walk around covered in blood, and these things are basically single use. There were 96 windows. That means in their dormitory, basically 96 shelves like this. They call this would be called a chalon. Okay. So they had different shelves of these things. It looks like, I guess you could say, like the hospital storage rooms. Anybody here worked in a hospital before? No. Okay. So they're one of the things the hospitals always have to be ready for is any event, especially emergency rooms. So usually I used to like this. When I was a Hatzolah member, one of the things you had to do was always make sure that the ambulance is stocked and the stock room is stocked and you yourself are stocked with everything you could possibly need on any call, which means if you had a busy call, you have to make sure to restock. You have to make sure that wherever you took from is also still stocked. And if you took stuff from the hospital, you have to make sure everything is always in order. So you can see like they have tons of these things just ready to go, whatever it is, the supply that you need. So that's what they used to have. 96, is there a significance to this number 96? Multiple of something?
24.
Well, it's 4 times 24. Good. Yeah, it's a multiple of 4. It's a multiple of 6. It's a multiple of 3. But I don't know why necessarily this number. Okay. That's the answer. 4 windows for each mishmar. What's 96 divided by 4? 24. So the 24 mishmarot, each one has its own. B'shem kol mishmar katuv al chalonotav the chulan stumot. Okay. So they had the names written on these, and they're all stumot. What does stumot in this case mean? It means they could close them. It means they have a door. So I said it's like this. This would be called a chalon. They have a door there, basically a locker, so that every mishmar has its clothing. The Kohanim didn't share clothing, apparently not. And they wanted to make sure, like each group is responsible for itself. When each group came on its week, which basically starts on Shabbos, what would they do? They open up their window, they open up the door, and it's open the entire time for them to take. Yeah, question?
How would they be able to share clothing? Essentially, clothing needs its own territory.
So they know that the people who are making them say, generally speaking, this is a size 6 and this is a size 8. Most of my clothing I've worn, I can't remember last time I wore something that was tailored. Have any of you guys ever worn anything that was tailored? Yeah, a suit, right?
Yeah.
What?
Sure.
You have tailored shirts? Wow. Fancy. Okay. I don't know. Where do you get them around here?
I sell them myself.
Well, oh, you do it yourself. Okay, fine. Most of us, I remember my mother used to make me go, get a suit fitted, for a bar mitzvah or something. But eventually, even by the time to get married, my mother found a place, they have so many suits ready to go. You could definitely find something that's your size. Although the last time I was in America, I went looking for a sports jacket that fit. And I think the style was everything's like tight. And I hated it. It was like impossible to basically find the sports jacket I wanted. Okay, maybe hopefully the styles have changed. And we could get a decent sports jacket now. But yeah, it was pretty hard. But I figured they don't need every Kohen needs to know exactly his thing. Generally speaking, they make all different sizes, and the Kohen is supposed to know what his size is supposed to be. Most men are within a certain range of height and build. Okay, and also we say that I think we're going to see this: a Kohen who's exceptionally fat is disqualified from serving. Okay, that doesn't disqualify anybody, regularly, but usually. Next, when it's time to go, they put it back in their lockers and they close them. Here's the answer to my question. Why 4 windows? All the pants were in one locker. And it says on that locker, Michnasayim. All the belts are in one, and it says Avnin on this one. All the turbans are in one, and it says it also on that one. Okay, good. And then it says Kohen Gadol maniach bigdei zav v'lishkash sheblo balayla, o be'et she'yasem in HaMikdash. The Kohen Gadol, he basically takes off his clothing at the end of the day, if he didn't serve, basically he didn't get dirty. Remember, he's just supposed to be in the Mikdash anyways, looking good and supervising, I guess. And if he goes home in the middle of the day for his hour break, so also he leaves his begadim there. Bigdei kuna mutar le'anopahem. Why is this important that the Rambam mentions this? What's the Gemara's discussion there? That means they can wear that for their own benefit. Like they're cold, so they put it on, or it's hot out and they want to be covered properly. Why is this a chiddush that a Kohen can dress in his garments and he could have hana from his garments? No, but why? What's the havamina? They have shatnez. No question is shatnez.
And you have a Gzerat HaKatuv that allows him to wear it for the avodah, but if it's just for hana,
yeah. So we're going to see to what extent does he have, once he's given this permission to wear Bigdei Kahuna, which have shatnez, to what extent can he continue wearing it? That's the question that the Tanaim and the Rishonim work with. What? Yeah, but the avneit, the Kohen's not going to walk around without the avneit. He has to wear a complete outfit. Remember, he has isur begadim. Is there a similar thing that applies to regular Jews? Where we find this with regular Jews also, a similar discussion, and that is with regards to tcheles. Tcheles, by definition, is wool, but not all bigdei tzitzit are made out of wool. As a matter of fact, nowadays most of our tzitzis are made out of cotton. Sometimes it's even synthetic. But let's say you wanted to wear linen tzitzis. Your garment is made out of linen. It's a t-shirt after all. And the Torah says, as I'll point this out, that technically speaking, if you had a linen garment for tzitzis, a linen tzitzis undershirt, and you wanted to do the mitzvah of tzitzis, and you wanted to do it with tcheles, and tcheles could only be wool, so you could. You have permission to make tcheles strings out of wool. They have to be, and use them in your linen garment. Except Chazal then said, you know what, we sort of lost tcheles. And there are certain points where you're not doing the mitzvah. When are you basically not doing the mitzvah? Let's take a simpler approach. There's no mitzvah at night. So suddenly at night, you shouldn't be allowed to wear these tzitzis perhaps. Right? Because now you don't have a commandment. So this and other things led it over the course of a few centuries, especially since we don't have tcheles, for there to be enactment saying, you can find this in the Mishneh Berurah talks about this, you're not supposed to make a linen garment for tzitzis because there's no way you could get around the whole string thing. You'd put in woolen strings, and you would not be accomplishing the mitzvah of tcheles. Why? Because you don't have tcheles, so you can't do it. But nowadays, it's become a question again. If you have a linen garment, does it still apply? Yeah, this is a question. What? Technically, just the tcheles ones have to be wool.
No,
so if you
had a linen garment,
you can make linen tcheles. You can linen strings, linen white strings.
so you only have permission for the tchelet.
Yeah.
The strings have to be something else.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? So, yeah, this is a complicated. So I'm just giving you Rashi Prakim here. We could go look into this when the Gzera applies. But that's why you're not going to find in stores a linen garment. As a matter of fact, like I said last time, does anybody have anything ever made out of linen? What do they make out of linen nowadays?
Sure.
They do? I know. That's fancy. Yeah, fancy stuff.
I talked with a tailor who told me that there's actually not even so many suits made out of with linen. I mean,
Yeah,
some
proper
do technique,
shatnez. Yeah.
But like the idea is that they don't like linen because there's so many alternatives that are better.
Yeah, cotton. The technology of cotton, by the way, why was cotton didn't take off for a few thousand years? They hadn't invented the cotton gin yet. In Egypt, where's Rambam always mentioned? Where do they use cotton? In Egypt. Nearly see-through garments. That's an Egyptian type of thing. Egyptians have cotton. But it wasn't saying that they could mass produce, like pick such quantities and then send it to China where we can make mass produced shirts and everything. You have all sorts of everything is made out of cotton nowadays, or cotton polyester blends. You can make sweaters, fancy sweaters, the good sweaters. What they used to make them out of? Wool, right? They were heavy and a little bit scratchy. And now I like my sweaters, my cotton sweaters. They're mostly, they have this wool-like thing, the way they make the thread. It's kind of good. You don't have any reason to use linen anymore. It used to be at least linen was used for undershirts, underwear, and bed sheets, pillowcases, things like that, blankets. Those are even called, I think, my grandmother used to call them linens.
Mm-hmm.
The linen closet, closet. But now you look, you get fancy bed sheets. They're all just like fancy cotton or some other materials, but they don't use linen anymore. Okay. What? Well, do you want to wear woolen underwear? I don't think you'd want to wear a woolen shirt.
Linen, scratchy.
No, they wore linen. They did it. It's big days there were made out of linen. That's what they used to do. Well, at least most of history. So nowadays we use cotton. So this doesn't come up. The point is, the Rambam paskins this based on the Gemara because there was a shaila. How are Kohanim wearing shatnez at all? This thing I don't understand. There's a few things in more Nevuchim. The Rambam tries to give reasons for the commandments. Correct? He basically one of his main assumptions is that the Torah is a repudiation of idolatry, and a lot of commandments can be explained, especially the negative commandments, as once again lahotzimi liban shel ovdei avodah zarah. So what does he say you shouldn't do kilayim? Kilayim refers to a number of things. What's kilayim? There's kilei kerem, with plants. There's kilayim with animals, mixed breeding animals, and grafting plants, and harnessing together two different types of animals. Those are all kilayim. Bas b'chalav is called kilayim in a few places. So there's lots of different kilayim is forbidden mixtures, and he says that the kilayim of garments, wool and linen, is what? What's the reason? Rambam says ostensibly. He figures. He doesn't know this for certain, but he figures it's what? It's because the Ovdei Avodah Zarah used to wear shatnez specifically. Wait a minute, but our Torah says our Kohanim have to wear shatnez. I would have said if I had the ability to actually meet Rambam, I would want to hear everything he has to say. But this is one thing I would offer, perhaps is incorrect. If it was true, like the Rambam said, so why did the Torah tell the Kohanim dafka to wear linen? Ella shatnez. It must be that the prohibition of wearing shatnez normally is because it's something specific to the temple. The Kohanim wear shatnez specifically. That's the most fancy part of their outfit. So we're not supposed to wear shatnez. And we've given one permission sometimes to wear shatnez when we're also doing a mitzvah. But we should not be using the mixture that's specific to the temple. Lamad davar domeh, just like the Rambam says, what's the special about the Ketores? Why shouldn't you be able to copy the Ketores recipe and burn some at home? Because there should be a smell that's specific to the temple. Don't make your fumigation, whatever you use to make your house smell good, like they do in the temple. That's a specific recipe for the temple. That's the temple's smell. So too, don't make your garments out of shatnez because that's specific to the temple. Okay, ask the guys if we're done with the hummus and things. Kaval to let them spoil. So if you're done with it, you should put it back in the fridge. You should take what you want and then put it back. Does everyone want anything? Okay, we could take a break even if necessary, or we could look at this. Okay. Where are we? I see it over here. So he says the Kohanim can have hanaf from the fichach loveshotan biyom avodato. The Kohen wears his garments the day he is serving. Afilu shelo b'shat avodah. Let's say the Kohen dressed up in his Kohen outfit in preparation for the Tamid. Correct? So he is going to offer the Tamid, and then he's done with the service. He goes back inside. Perhaps he's going to sit down and eat some korban or do something else. Maybe he's going to go pray. He's going to go study. He can continue wearing his shatnez Kohen garments. Well, basically it's just the avnei, but still he's still wearing shatnez, even though he is not actively performing the temple service right now. Well, oh, I got that wrong. Okay, let's scratch that. Chutz min ha'avneit. Is here. Oh, I know. We're going to the next thing. So the Ravid says, "Lo uchar min ha'gemara el hachi ela kol yom mutar b'mikdash." Okay, right. So I was getting ahead of myself here. Okay, the Rambam says the heter hana in this case is because not shas avoda stam. You shouldn't be wearing big day kahuna and getting enjoyment from them because there's no mitzvah, and there's going to be a chutz mi'abneit aser l'choyin l'osho ela b'shas ha'avoda that he can only wear. And we're going to see over here that there's other Rishonim who disagree. Okay, the Ravid Rabbeinu Tam the Rosh Kashus HaMikdash Shelo b'shas avoda muter levosh afilu es ha'avneit. Okay, I was giving the other Rishonim. Okay, because it's a long sugya. Okay, when I was 18, there was I remember there was a test I had to do, and I forgot who says what. Okay, so let's work through this again. The whole question was, once again, what can a Kohen wear? And the permission to wear the avneit even applies all day, according to some Rishonim who are not the Rambam, because once he's wearing it, he can. The Rambam says you shouldn't wear the avneit shas avoda. However, the rest of the big day kahuna, you'd think that he has to take them off. Why? Because he's not working anymore. It's just for Shas Avoda, right?
Right.
I'm sure maybe there's a pasuk that he derives this from. Also, Kohen Hedel Lov Show El B'Shas Avoda. Wait a second. You have Yud Beis starts there,
You base?
and Yud Beis starts next part. Okay, so that's why you see this over here. This is Yud Aleph Yud Bet. What does Makbili have also? Machon Mamre says this is just all halacha Yud. Oh, running out of battery. Yoni, quick. I need to charge this one 2% before the computer signs off. Here, give me a boost. Okay, we're still on at 1% left. Wow.
Wow.
Okay. There's sometimes I wish this thing would make noise. Like, wow. Okay, I guess we're setting up for the party. I don't know what this is in honor of, but you guys are lucky. Okay. Fine. So I'll read you what David has just pointed out to me is the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam and the Ravid, the Rosh. Sheva Mikdash lo b'shas avoda mortar lo b'lo shafilu sa'avneit. The Chafetz Chaim says shadas Ravid rak b'yom mutar alach lo balayla. Yes, during that day, but at night he definitely has to take it off. When's the Kohen have to take off his Kohen outfit? Apparently, when do you take off your tefillin? Do you have to take off your tefillin when nightfall hits? When it's sundown? If you do, you're doing a mitzvah. Okay. Definitely shouldn't put them on once it's after sundown, but
Right.
you don't have to take them off right as the sun is going down, or you can even wear them a little bit longer. You're just not doing anything wrong. Don't fall asleep in them.
But by tzeis you have to, right? By the time it gets like fully.
Well, technically, if you there's no thing that's saying you take off your tefillin right now. You know, has ever been there where someone takes off tefillin right at sundown or about sundown and makes the bracha? You've seen that yet? Yeah. Okay. Well, so someone said it's not our minhag. You're not supposed to do it. Yeah, I said, what do you mean? It's very clearly in both Talmudim. In Bavel, they don't say the bracha lishmor chukav, but Eretz Yisrael, the minhag is to do so. Last time I checked, we're in Eretz Yisrael. Okay. Wow, got this wrong. Next, L'gabe Kohen Gadol, L'dasa Kesef Mishneh, Dino Kohen Kod, Edyot, Vaser Lo L'bosh Bigdei Kalaim, El B'Shas Avoda. What about the Kohen Gadol? He wears shatnez only when he's working. Hu Rashai, but the Aruch HaShulchan says Hu Rashai L'bosh Kol Yom Es Begadov Kevin Shekasher Hu Rotzeh Hu Rashai Lavod. Let's say the Kohen Gadol has no plans to work. He's wearing shatnez. The Kohen Gadol has to dress like a Kohen Gadol. So it's his choice to work or not every single day of the year. So this seems to be a proof to the position of the Ravid if the Kohen Gadol has also a dispensation to wear shatnez. So perhaps also a Kohen has a dispensation. Once he's wearing his garments, he can wear them the rest of the day. And yes. Yeah, they said it. He has to be wearing l'chavod tifaret. His tifaret is that he's dressed as Kohen Gadol and hanging out in the Beis HaMikdash all day long. And not only that, there's an important thing. The Kohen Gadol has to be wearing the tzitz. The Rambam says the tzitz miratzeh for korbanot that are not perfectly qualified because of tuma. He has to be wearing the tzitz. Okay, so thank you for pointing this out. The question the Rambam was addressing here was besides the whole shotness thing, a Kohen, can he just wear his garment stam if he's not working because it's a mitzvah? They're supposed to wear them for the avoda. If it's not shas avoda, why is he dressed anyways? And a kohanim lovshim lavoda ela tzemer fishtim bilvad. Now, this is Rabbi Rabinovich is going to discuss what does the Rambam get by saying this. They only wear tzemer and pishtim. Well, why? Why does he say that? So there's two things you can learn from this. One, you could say, well, I don't know, what if we would come up with a nicer way to do it? Like they're better material, silk, okay? Or you can come up with cotton. Now, eventually cotton will improve. We can make it better. Machine-made materials. And so the answer is no. But more than that, it doesn't just say tzemer pishti in the Torah. There's all sorts of materials mentioned in the Torah. We have tchelas argaman tolad shani. We have sheish and moshzar and izima, all sorts of other materials. So the Rambam says these are all variations of wool and linen. That's the point. Anytime it says sheish or bad, those mean what? It means just linen, which is also behu boots. Boots shazir. Okay, boots is sometimes in the Torah also, or in Tanakh at least. Those are all basically forms of linen. Tchelet is always wool that is dyed blue, sky color, a little bit a pale sky color. Okay, sometimes the sky, by the way, the sky's color is bluish, but it varies parts of blue. If it's the area closest to the sun, the part of the sky that's closest to the sun, is the palest blue, and the part of the sky that's farthest from the sun is the darkest blue. Go check this out. Don't look at the sun, but you'll see that this is true. Okay. And as the sun, when the sun's close to the horizon, the color of the sky then gets, you could actually see argamon in the sky. You get reds in the sky. Okay, fine. So that's what techelet is. Argamon hu atzemer atzavua adom. Argamon is wool, same material, just colored red. V'tulat shani hu atzemer atzavua v'tulat. This adom is not exactly what you and I would call red. This adom is darker, a purplish thing. Nowadays, Rav Herzog showed that this is basically equivalent of the Tyrian purple, except the Rambam might not say it's Tyrian purple. I think, is it like your shirt or like his shirt? Is it Reuben's or Yoni's? Like your Herschel, right? Is it Herschel or is it Yoni's shirt?
Maroon
Or is it like the sauerkraut? So it really, you're talking about saying it's made from.
Right.
By the way, the Rambam says that the argamon was colored with laka. Laka is from bugs. It's actually used in nowadays for all sorts of things, and it's also the root for what they use nail polish is called lak in Hebrew. It's an Arabic term. The Rambam's opinion of where the argamon comes from is against what a lot of Achronim say is basically it's from the Murex. The same, basically they found the Tcheles because they knew where to look for the argamon, which wasn't really lost. The argamon, right? That's what they call the Murex trunculus in Hebrew is the argamon keakotzim. The snail that they used to make royal Tyrian purple it's the chiddush that Rav Herzog has. Somehow you can get blue out of this. That's why it always says the chelis and argamon are always mentioned together in one breath in the Torah. They're always together with the trop. So Rav Herzog's discovered the chelis by looking at this argamon keakotzim, and basically every time in the lab, remember, he kept getting purple out of it, and he says, you've got to find a way to make it blue. And what was the missing ingredient? The sunlight, the ultraviolet, and that's why they're so connected. Okay, and I have all sorts of friends who are experimenting with tchelis now because the tchelis people give people their samples and do it at your home. And there's some who usually on the influence of Kabbalah basically say tchelis should be more purplish itself. Now, I disagree with them. I said you shouldn't let the Kabbalah and later literature affect you. It's very clear in the Rambam and Rashi that tchelis is a sky color, and it's a pure sky color, which is, for all intents and purposes, what you and I would call blue. It could be variants of blue, but it shouldn't be purplish, because then you're getting to argamon. So the whole problem is that, according to, now that we have tchelis back, well, what are we going to do argamon? Are we going to do it the shita everybody else or Rambam's shita of argamon? And Talat Shani is basically something that's been around forever. They use these worms. Another, it says they lay their eggs on these plants, and they're used to make a red that's I guess less purple and more similar to this. There was a fellow who wasn't what we saw someone at the base of HaMikdash 2 weeks ago showed us his dyed samples of Talat Shani. Did you guys see that? Maybe with us? Someone came over and just said, here's a piece of wool. He had Tchelis, Argamon, and Talat Shani, showing the differences between them. Okay.
I think the Machon Mikdash would seem to go with the opinion that Argamon comes from the Murex. I seem to remember this in there.
Most go with it.
Yeah.
Professor Amar basically said as much. And the cover of his book, the Argamon, everything about Argamon is what? A Murex trunculus shell. Rav Herzog made that assumption also. It seems to be that all the ancient Greek sources and everything we have indicates that the argamon is this from the sea snail source, and it's a question how Rambam diverged so far from everybody else in this regard. Okay, next. So what the point is that these are all forms of linen and wool. Kol makom shneimar b'Torah sheish o sheish moshzar tzarich shiachud kaful shisha. So when you have linen that's sheish, it has to actually be 6-stranded. Umakom shneimar bad. If it ever says bad, imaya chud echad levado. That's fine. Kasher mitzvah mina muvchar sheyeh kaful shisha. Whenever it says bad, you get away with less than 6-stranded. It could be 1-stranded, but it could be mitzvah mina muvchar to also be 6-stranded. Umakom shneimar moshzar bilvad tzarich sheyeh chutan kaful shmona. Shizura means they're all woven together, so it means an 8-stranded string. Okay. Kol makom shneimar b'Torah masei rokem, embroidered. Hu shetiyat tzurot hana'aseit ba'arig nir'in mitzad echad b'fnei ha'arig bilvad. That's embroidered. It only shows up on one side of this, I guess, the cloth. So look at this prochus over here. You see the backside is all one, looks like one thing, and you only see the embroidery, the fancy things on one side. There's a way to embroider that shows up on both sides. Maaseh choshev means you embroider the wool, the curtain, let's say, so that the picture shows up on both sides. And people who know how to do these things know this. This is not unanimous. And we're going to get into this whole Rabbi Rabinovich thing. Does anybody see this? The Yad Pshuta. Has anybody here had the chance to study Yad Pshuta yet? We'll have introduction to Yad Pshuta in a minute. Here, send this around, take a look at it, and we're going to talk about it in a second. Well, everybody, how can you learn without? You cannot give a shiur nowadays. I never knew this in America. They have shiurs in Rambams, nice brisker Torahs. You cannot give a shiur in Rambam if you don't consult with Rabbi Rabinovich and Rav Kapach. So Rav Kapach has his parish in the Rambam. They always disagree, by the way. There's some good sugyas where they have major disagreements, and but you need them. Okay, so this is the Yad Pshuta. Rabbi Rabinovich didn't finish it, by the way, when he passed away, but he started it. This is from, I think, 30 years ago. If I'm not mistaken, this was put out, this volume 30 years ago or 20 years ago. Which one is it? So we're going to mention in a second. So not everything here is clear. For example, this Maaseh Choshev idea. Rashi says, "Im ein chutan kaful shisha pasul." He says if it's not sixfold, it's pasul. And also here, the dasaram Maaseh Rokeh Maaseh Oreg hayufin shanim shabem yatzru tzurot the ariga. We just said it. The Rambam Maaseh Choshev Maaseh Rokeh means is it on one side or on both sides. Rashi says Maaseh Rokeh notzrat tzura idei rikima b'machat al gabei ha'arig. Maaseh Rokeh means they used basically a machat is a needle. It's needlepoint embroidery after the thing was woven. They're using a needlepoint to go through, so it ends up the same on both sides. If you did maseh, it says here maseh choshev, it was in the actual material, and it managed to make it that the pictures on the opposite sides were different from each other, which thing also you could do. I mean, I guess we could learn this, but nowadays most people have no business learning this. Why? Because we can mass produce. In the olden days, many people had to work in clothing production, just like most people worked in what? Agriculture. You needed to farm a lot. Nowadays, the miuta de miuta, how many men actually work in agriculture in any given population? Well, there's still a lot of people. What percentage of the population?
Depends on what you mean American population.
Or just Israel. America, it's what is it, a millionth? Maybe you want to have a million people working. Yeah. No, not less. No, less. Sorry, no.
It's like
What happened?
More than
No, sorry.
100 probably.
A percent of the people working it?
Yeah, it's something like 1% or 2%.
Percent, okay.
It's
Oh.
still
I was exaggerating, obviously. If it was 1 million, that only means like 250 people work in agriculture in America.
If you're only counting people who physically like put stuff in the ground, it's probably a lot less.
A lot
If you
less.
include, like all the people who run trucks,
Yeah.
supermarkets, and
No, I'm not talking about guys who work supermarkets. I'm not talking about distribution already, the truck already. That's not agriculture because trucking is, shipping and everything. That's already, everything has to be trucked somewhere. It has to be shipped somewhere.
I mean,
There are people actually doing agricultural work. And also animal husbandry. Very rare things. Even in Israel, we're supposed to be agricultural and work the land. It's a miyut, but whatever. The whole point is we do this a lot less, so we're less familiar with it. Now, I brought up Rabbi Rabinovich over here because there's a diuk here in the Rambam. He just tells you tcheles is what? Tcheles is wool dyed blue.
Yeah.
He doesn't mention anything about a chilazon. And everybody jumps on this. The Rambam, so you need tcheles. So he says tcheles is always, wool dyed blue. In Hilchot Tzitzis, he says something very interesting. Starting in the second parak, okay, of Hilchot Tzitzis. You guys familiar with this diuk? Anybody know where I'm getting at? Oh. You've seen the Tiferes Yisrael, what he says? He's the one who made this diuk famous. Okay, so I'll read it to you there. I prepared this beforehand. Okay. Brachos. Tzitzis before brachos, right? Techelet ha'murah b'Torah b'chol makom hi hatzemer tzavo kifatuch shebakochal v'zohi demut harakia hanireit la'ayin b'to'aro shel harakia. He basically describes the same thing here. Tcheles is, whatever we say tcheles in the Torah, it means wool dyed basically blue. It says demut harakia hanireit la'ayin b'to'aro shel harakia. Perfect sky blue. Okay? If you unmistakably blue, by the way, what you and I call blue. Why did the Rambam just say kahol? Well, it says kochal. Kochal, what's kochal? Eyeshadow. The blue stuff there. They're putting, the makeup that's been around forever. Vatchelet hamra b'tzitzit, and the chelis that we're talking about with tzitzis. Tzarich shetehei tzviata tzviya yedua shomeret biyofya v'lo tishtaneh. The chelis of tzitzis has to be a very specific dyeing, a well-known one that stays. It lasts in its beauty and does not change. Whichever isn't dyed properly, even if it's perfectly ke'ena rakia, looks perfectly blue, it's not kosher for tzitzis. Okay, so there are those who say, what's the diuk now you can get from the Rambam? Very clearly, it seems that Rav Kapach likes this diuk, that Tiferes Yisrael makes it, others made this diuk. The Rambam seems to be saying that when we require this very specific type of tchelis that's done a very specific way, that's for tzitzis. But for Big Day Kahuna, anything will do. That's basically what they medayik in the Rambam. The first Yisrael says explicitly, Rav Kapach likes this diuk. Why? Because he says, with regards to Big Day Kahuna, he says tchelis everywhere is wool dyed blue. And tchelis, he says, there has to be this type of tchelis that doesn't change. For example, you get good tchelis. One of the reasons you know it's good tchelis for tzitzis is that you can't wash it out, correct? Mm-hmm. The Raziner stuff, not only does it wash out easily and ruin the rest of your clothing in the laundry, you tie Raziner tchelis to a bunch of wool strings that are white, what does it start doing? It starts turning the white ones blue just by being next to them.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's losing its blue, and it's not, that's just one of the reasons why it can't be. Also, its color is a little bit off. It's more color, it's similar to this stuff instead of the blue jeans. Chazal said, if you want to rip people off, you want to imitate tcheles, basically indigo is the way to go. You could dye your wool with indigo, and only God could tell the difference between that and actual tcheles, right? So that's also, by the way, one of the proofs that they have for our modern tcheles ends up chemically identical to indigo, final product. So that seems to be the final proof that the tcheles is correct, because the way it comes out, it's a molecule similar to the purple of Tyrian purple, yet it's basically identical to that of indigo. So here it seems to be saying in these laws of the Beis HaMikdash over here that if you use indigo for your big day kahuna, that should be totally fine, because this requirement of dyeing it the exact specific way seems to be only with regards to the tzitzis. It's a good deal. It also makes building the Beis HaMikdash a lot more simpler, because the Rambam doesn't say argaman has to be, the exact recipe of argaman. Any way you can make the wool purple would work, right? Where do they get what from?
That it can be a different tchelis.
Well, the Rambam says a few times, tchelis is wool dyed blue, and for tzitzis it has to be very specific one that stays and doesn't move and has to have these things. What?
They want to say that the Rambam saying.
Hold on! Don't get to Rabbi Rabinovic's kasha. Rabbi Rabinovich was aware of this diuk, and his entire introduction to the second parak, where the Rambam says this in tchelis, basically says, everybody makes this diuk, but it can't be. You know why? Because all the source materials, that is Chazal, in the Gemaras, make no such distinction. As a matter of fact, the source that tchelis has to be from this very specific chilazon and done right is said regarding the big day kahuna. So this can't be the diuk. This can't be the diuk in the Rambam. That the Rambam's just making a distinction between the source of tchelis for the Beis HaMikdash and the source of tchelis for tzitzis. Tzitzis has to be the chilazon and only one way, and you can't use indigo. Whereas in the Beis HaMikdash, indigo and everything will go. Pun intended. That can't be, Rabbi Rabinovich says, because all the sources seem to say that it has to be the chilazon. Instead, Rabbi Rabinovich is saying that for tcheles of your tzitzis, it has to last, because this is something that hidyotos wear. That is not kohanim hidyotos. It means regular people. Regular tcheles has to be the real deal of tcheles. Why? Because that's the mitzvah. In the mikdash, you don't have to make it that it lasts. You know why? Because the second it gets dirty, you're not going to launder it. You're not going to wash it. Remember, the Rambam always paskind. These are basically single-use garments. They don't have to be dyed to even withstand laundry. They have to be dyed. They have to be worn once. Okay, if they survived their first use because the coin didn't do much that day, he only did the Torah, he only lit menorah, so he put his avnate back. But the avnate doesn't have a long shelf life. If it gets dirty, it's gone. You don't wash it. Rambam just said that. So that's what Rabbi Rabinovich says. They're all the same tchelas. They all have to be the chilazon, no exceptions. Except Big Day Kahuna don't need this thing, this added condition that it lasts. That's all the Rambam was saying. And that answers all the questions. I think that this is a good thing. The person who introduced this idea to me, by the way, got it backwards. Remember him saying that he was basically wearing Radziner Tcheles. I said, what, that doesn't work. He's like, no, the Rambam says, the Duke in the Rambam is that Tcheles for tzitzis can be anything that's blue. He got the Duke wrong. No, they tried to be Medaik. Rav Kapach, the Tiferes Yisrael. The Tiferes Yisrael lived in the 1800s. He was a big Rav. Okay? He was actually, he would be on the more maskilish side, and in a good way. He'd fit in more at YU than at Lakewood. So he basically, his diuk only works for the Mikdash. You have this leniency, but even then, like Rabbi Rabinovich has shown, it doesn't really work. I mentioned this because Rabbi Rabinovich says, but we still don't have tchelas nowadays. So God willing, we should live to see all these halachas. The Rambam mentions tchelas so many times in Hilchot tzitzis. That's his running assumption that you have tchelas. He even tells you how to tie it. I know it's like almost after the fact. Rambam says, if you don't have tchelas, here's how you tie your tzitzis. Different than the Shulchan Aruch, which doesn't talk about tchelas at all, right? Yeah, which is a problem. So it's good we can go back to this. So I mentioned this was mentioned 30 years ago. I published this, Tafshin Samech Aleph. Okay, so that was 21 years ago. 21 years ago, Rabbi Rabinovich still wasn't convinced, I think, of the Til Tchelet. Baruch Sturman, who's the one who makes the tchelas nowadays. Have you met him? He's a very great guy. He's Mizakik Klal Yisrael with his. He works at Kfar Adumim or near Mishor Adumim. You can go visit their tchelas factory. And he wrote after Rabbi Rabinovich passed away about how Rabbi Rabinovich helped them find the tchelas. Rabbi Rabinovich had one rule, that whatever they do to have this technique, to design this technique of dyeing the wool, it could only be done with the technology that Chazal had. If you're using some cheating method that we have now, they're not proving anything. Perhaps you're doing something that the Chazal could not have done. You have to use only that which was available in Chazal's times, and if you get the right color, then it's good. And lo and behold, what happened? They got it. It's not so fancy. And I've written about this. I put some other stuff online about these, where you can see it. You can just go to whatever Baruch has put out there. It's very interesting. Hamur and Shabehem is that I met Rabbi Rabinovich's grandson here almost more than 10 years ago. I saw he was wearing tchelas. I asked him, what's your grandfather's opinion? As you know, Rabbi Rabinovich's Talmidim wear tchelas. He was all for it. And I asked him, so how should you tie your tchelas? Which way of tying? What did Rabbi Rabinovich say? The grandfather. His opinion was tie like the Rambam. Rambam is positive tradition. We do it like the Rambam. He also has another essay here where he seems to prove the Rambam's position that it's supposed to be 1 out of 8 strings. Because the Rambam says 1 out of 8 strings, Rabbi Rabinovich has various Talmudic proofs why it should be 1 out of 8. Not like the Ravid 1 out of 4. And he does not entertain 2 out of 4 like Rashi and Tosfos. Okay? Of course, there are other opinions. See what Gavriel said about the 1 out of 4. He's pretty convinced it should be 1 out of 4. Okay. I could hear that. It's kind of awkward because in the Rambam, they asked him in a tshuva, Rambam, how do you make 1 out of 8 strings? Because you say you put the strings through. He says, oh, you dunk only half of it into the vat. But Chazal don't say dunking half a string into the vat. Chazal talk about dyeing a whole tongue, means a whole clump of wool at once, and then making strings out of that clump. Chazal don't talk about dyeing strings. It doesn't really matter which way you do it.
If you dye the whole clump, then the whole string is gonna be.
Yes, the Chazal talk about dyeing clumps. This whole Rambam thing about only dunking half the string into the vat is tedious and unnatural and doesn't fit history. So there are those who say like the Ravid, simple enough. But I'm thinking a lot of Rabbi Rabinovich's proofs to the 1 string thing also could be worked into the Ravid, but definitely not like Rashi and Tosfos. Okay, so that was a good digression. But
I remember seeing Bar-Hayim give a shir on this, and
yes,
because this is like one of the most difficult Tosfos
all
that
shots.
I've ever seen. I was gonna say in all shots, but I haven't seen enough to say that.
Okay.
And anyway, And basically, what he said is like, oh yeah, he doesn't really. They basically don't really explain why it's this way. They just assume.
And not only that, when they say that aren't there Talmudic sources that say it should be one string? So they say that they understand the sugya in Menachos as saying 2 strings, right? But all the other Talmudic sources assume 1 string. So they say, okay, it must be a machlokas Gemaras. Our Gemara says 2, and every other Gemara says 1. Or maybe our Gemara also says 1, just like all the other Gemaras. Why don't Tosfos say that? Yeah, it's very difficult. And also, Tosfos are coming from a point not of positive tradition, but trying to reconstruct. It seems like Rav Shechter also said, Rambam seems to be describing some positive traditions that he had. Even though he didn't actually have the tcheles, they remembered these things very well, what they were doing. Although his time method also, it's difficult.
None of the Gonim have the same method.
Yeah.
And I would think that they're the ones who have the tradition.
Have a closer to tradition. Yeah. It's very difficult. I wish that's a problem with these broken traditions of trying to reconstruct things from. When the Talmud says a lot of things, they didn't expect us to lose even more information. Some things they assumed. It was pashut to them, and they didn't even write it down. And for us now, we're left groping in the dark. By the way, familiarize yourself with the Yad Pshuta. If you're not in a base medrash which has a copy, try to get copies for your base medrash. Like we've been collecting these. We don't have a set here. We're just collecting whatever I find the volume. I bring it here. I have 2 of his Noshim volume 1 or volume 2. So one's in here in the base medrash, the other one's at home. So we're trying to build up the library, and hopefully maybe we should just splurge and just buy the whole thing. But sometimes you need, when it's on sale, it's like 2,000 shekels, just like that. You don't have the money lying around, so you can't do it. And also, have you guys seen Rav Kapach's commentary on the Mishneh Torah?
Yeah,
the red set.
They have it at Mikdash Torah. I think they probably have it listed if I just haven't found it.
So it's a very good thing to have. There's 3 sets here on the Yeshuv. None are complete. The shul I go to for Shacharis, someone took out just like Zmanim volume 3, and another one that's always used. Like it's missing two of the 2 most used ones disappeared a while ago, and the library here of the Hester Yeshiva also incomplete for some reason. Yeah, it's very frustrating. So I go there like, okay, please, if I go to the library, you better have this flight. Oh no, pick the wrong place to go to today. So they didn't have it. Okay, next. So thank you, David, for that correcting here. What else does the Rambam say about these things? Okay. He says here, V'chitzad ma'aseh abagdaim. Hakatonet bein shel kohen hadol bein shel kohen gadol mishubetzet hayita. What's mishubetzet mean? Shehi batim barigata kamo beit hakosot. What's the beit hakosot? What is that? The reticulum? I want to say the beit hakosot is one of the internal organs, one of the stomachs of a ruminant behemoth. An animal that chews its cud has all these different stomachs, right? So the beit hakosot, you see this picture, it looks like it has, different chambers. It looks sort of like this is sticking out, the texture of this glass. Imagine if instead of protruding, these things were inside, from the inside. Okay? That's what kosot mean, or batim. A very intricate weave. Kamosho sino orgim babagadim akashim. They use when they make heavy clothes, so they make this weave so that it's thicker, makes the material thicker. Okay. The sleeve is actually woven on itself, and then they sew it on. So it's not one piece of material; it's the sleeves are sewed on. Who has shirts like that nowadays? The shirts we're wearing right now. You can see there's a seam over here. The sleeve is sewn on as a separate piece. Okay. The length of this robe is up to what? Just above the heel, not the ankle, the heel, right? The length of the sleeve, somebody says sharvul for some reason, somebody just calls it beit yad, is up to the pas yad. Where's the pas yad? Does it mean the wrist? No, it means also over here, basically where his hand starts. Okay? And also it's as wide as his hand. When his hand is like this, the widest part of his hand, but it has to go through. Okay. Nowadays we have buttons on our sleeves, but instead it was just one sleeve. It wasn't a button sleeve, so it had to be closed. They go from the loins until the thighs. Shehum Yomala Mina Tabur. Basically, it starts above the belly button. Okay, how do you get it to stay up there? Normally, we have a waistband, and a waist is a natural place to hold up things that have, a waist. But in this case, the Kohen Gadol's, the Kohen, whatever he is, his pants go up to here. So how is it held there? It goes above his belly button. How does it held there? It says here, Karov min alev. It's actually close to the heart. Ad sof hayarech shiar kuba goes all the way down the thigh until the beginning of the knee. Ushnatzim yesh lahem. They have shnatzim. Shnatzim are those the strings basically that they held them up there. They have a picture over here of the shnatzim ties. Basically, they have to be tied around the middle of the person's chest. That's what holds them up. Well, drawstrings. They don't have a base nekev or a bait erva. What does that mean? Base nekev means a hole in the back. Perhaps your underwear had a hole. Nowadays, we don't have this. I don't think men's underwear doesn't have this, but would allow for easier access in case he needs to answer nature's call. And base erva means a hole in the front side also in those cases. Most of our underwears, I think, I don't know, they have a way that there's an opening in front, correct? So that's what they don't have. Ela mukafin kamin kis. No, they go entirely around. They don't have it. If a Kohen has to answer nature's call, he has to take them off entirely, lower them around his knees. But there's no convenient way to use the facilities in this case. Okay, turn the page. Hamitznefet shel Kohen Gadol had yot, or ka sheish esrei amah. The mitznefet of a Kohen Gadol, or the Kohen Yot, was basically a piece of linen. How long was it? 16 amas. How long is that? Yeah, almost 8 meters. Every amma we say is 48 centimeters, so it's just shy of 8 meters long. That's really long. So wait a minute, it's kind of heavy, right? No, it's made out of linen, and it's very light. V'avneit rochbo kimo shalosh etzbot. The avneit is only 6 fingers wide. How much is a finger? About 2 centimeters. So three fingers wide. So it's 6 centimeters wide. How much is 6 centimeters? About this much. Okay, that's about 6 centimeters or so. Three quarters of a tefach. The avneit is 32 amas long, made out of wool. Wool and linen, yes. Makifo maxiro kerech al gabe kerech. He keeps winding it around his waist. Wow, how much is your waist? What's your anybody ever measured their own waist here? Yeah, around the waist. I don't know.
Pant sizes here.
I don't know. What? You have a 29-inch waist? Okay. So I don't know what it is. What's that in centimeters? Because it says here it's 32 amas. 32 amas is about 1.5 feet times 32, so it's 48 feet long. 32 shtaimu shlushim amma, which is 48 feet long. That's how long the avneit was. And it's kind of narrow also. It keeps getting wound around the waist. Uvigdei kuna kulan enosin otan maasei machat ela maasei oreg. They can't be needlepoint, done with sewing it. What?
According to Rambam, he finishes the avodah, he has to take the avneit off. Is he being over on his soul all the time? He has to unwind this?
No. I mean, there's an easy way to take it off, but whatever. He's not over on the. Obviously, it's within reason he should take it off. As it says, Maaseo Reg. Yes, these things are really long. I want to see the HaMikdash, the ones they're making now. When they have their Kohanim do their Tirgul, they don't wear an avneit like this. These things are super expensive. Okay? So, yeah. What's an avneit look like? I showed you over here this picture material. This is woven from Tchelas Argaman to Lat Shani. Basically, one type is red, one type is blue, one type is purple. Overall, from far away, it looks purplish, but it has a sort of texture to it when you look at it individually. How exactly do they weave it? What should the pattern look like? I guess it's up to the artisans who make it. So you can have all different ideas going on here. But that was the colorful part of his outfit. Let's look at the tzitz. This is, you guys know what the Tosfos says here about this? I was wondering what Rabbeinu Tam, we're going to see, what does it say on the tzitz? Kodesh Lashem, right? So how does it say that? It says on across 2 different lines. It's a brisa on Shabbos where just in passing it talks about how they made the tzitz. Let's read it. Ketzad Maaseh tzitz. Oseh Tas Shel Zahav. He makes a band of gold. Rachav Shtei Etzbaot. It's 4 centimeters wide. What about its length? That depends on the Kohen. Why? Umakif me ozen laozen. It's supposed to be in the front of his head from ear to ear. And I guess it would depend on the Kohen Gadol. Some have bigger heads, some have smaller heads. And what else about it? It says here, the Goteva Lav Shnei Shitin. Have 2 lines of text. Kodesh La Hashem. Because that's in Torah. Kodesh La Hashem. It actually has to say that. It says the Shema for Russia written out as it is. Kodesh Milmata, La Hashem Milmala. But normally in Hebrew, I don't know about you, but you read from right to left and also from top to bottom. But in this case, Kodesh is below, possibly on the right side, and La Hashem should be above hand. If you read it on one line, like normal, Kodesh La Hashem, it's kosher. And even that's how they did it sometimes, just simply like in the Torah, Kodesh La Hashem. How does he know they actually did it that way? Because the Brisa says that after the destruction of the temple, there were Tanoim who visited Rome and got to see the tzitz. Why? Because the Kalim were taken away as trophies to Rome. And the Romans held on to these things. And some of the Chazal saw them and said that, yeah, I saw one of the tzitz had Kodesh La Hashem written across one line like normal. And you look here, they present you what Rabbeinu Tam's opinion is. Here's the Rambam's opinion. Basically comes out that Kodesh, maybe it was larger print, La Hashem. And here they show a picture of the way they did it. Kodesh La Hashem. Hashem is written higher than Kodesh. It's hard to see in the picture. That's what Machon Mikdash made. So you see this picture over here? It says Kodesh La Hashem. Kodesh. There's no vav in Kodesh. And then it says here, Rabbeinu Tam's opinion. It says Kodesh La Hashem. And Rabbeinu Tam there is addressing something very interesting. Where's the Masechah Shabbos here? I'll read you what Rabbeinu Tam says, because I didn't get it. Maybe someone could enlighten me. It's on Samech Gimel. Okay. Anybody familiar with the sugya here?
Yeah, I'm familiar with this. Yeah.
Which parak is it?
6 parak.
Because I was reading, I'm familiar with it because I was reading an article about how everything is correct just because someone said it. In my mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kedarko Bakodesh, normally what Rabbeinu Tam is saying addresses what Rashi says to disagree with Rashi, correct? Let's read what Rashi says. Rashi says here, Yud Hey Milmala, Kodesh Lamid Milmata, Kodesh Lamid Milmata. So you separate the Lamid from the word La Hashem. Why would you do that? The Rambam has it Kodesh La Hashem. One word, another word. What do you gain by separating the Lamed from its word and putting it on the same line as together with the word Kodesh? No, you get symmetry. Four letters. Okay, so the way Rashi has it, it's Yud Hey Milmala, Kodesh Lamed Milmata. Okay, so Rashi says Kolomar Hashem Shalem B'Shita Elyona. The name is whole on the top line, and Shalem means without additions. The Kodesh Lamed B'Shita Tachtona. And Kodesh Lamed, Kodesh, an extra Lamed, is on the lower line. Shalo Lahakdim Sha'arotiot Limala Min Hashem. So that other letters do not precede that of the name. So Lamed is considered an intrusion, a foreign body. Okay, because you have 2 lines, so you have to put God's name on top. But that, like we show you, here's the way Rashi says to do it. Look at that third picture. It says Hashem Kodesh Lo. That's a little bit awkward. You see that? That's the way Rashi is describing. He also says here, Rabbeinu Halevi Shoneh, Kodesh Lashem Milmata, V'hi. He says Kodesh Lashem should be, underneath. Okay, that could be. Rabbeinu Tam says different. Katuv Alav Shnei Shitin, Yod Hey Milmala, V'Kodesh Lamed Lamata. Near Le Rabbeinu Tam, Shaya Katuv Yod Hey B'Sof Shita Rishona. The name of Hashem is at the end of the top line, on the left side. The Kodesh Lamed B'Tchilat Shita Shniya, at the beginning of the lower line, on the right side. The Hashta Nikra Yafeh, and now you can actually read it the way it's supposed to be. At least you read from right to left, you read it as is. Rabbeinu Tam prefers Rabbeinu Tam's way because here you read Hashem Kodesh Lo, because they're right on top of each other. If you do it Rabbeinu Tam's way, you get Kodesh La Hashem. At least you could read it normally. So wait a minute. If the point is to read it normally, why don't they ask him why you separate the Lamed from the Shem Hashem? Is that really supposed to be? Because we see the Rambam's way, you write it as is. Keep the words together. There's no Lamed isn't a word. It's not a letter. We don't write letters on their own. Is there any one word letter in the Torah? One letter word in the Torah? They say Ha La Hashem. Ha La Hashem, but that's a very awkward thing. It's just a single hey. Is it its own word?
Probably some abbreviation or something.
No. It's supposed to be Hey Hashela. You look, what? No, it is definitely not Hey Idea. It's a Hey Hashela, which is conjugated funny. Normally, let's say you were adding the prefix Lamed to Hashem's name, it would get a patach, and then the Yud, pronounced like an Aleph, would get nothing. La, tho, nai. That's the way you're supposed to say it. As opposed to, if already the word is pronounced with the Chataf patach under the Aleph, that's not there, then the prefix should be la'ah. Like if you had avonim, which start with the Chataf patach Aleph, then a prefix Lamed would get a full patach before it. La avonim. Okay? La avotenu. Right? But in this case, the Aleph is totally silent. That's one of the unique things about God's honorific name. And if then you said Hey HaShelah before that Lamed, it should get a Chataf patach itself. So it should be Ha La Dhonoi. That's how it should have been pronounced. But in this case, it's as though the two prefixes have been added at once. This is a prefix Lamed with a Shiva. This is a prefix Hey with a Chataf patach, which is like a Shiva. So they become one syllable. Hal. You say Hal. And then the rest of Hashem's name as is. Hal Adonai. Like that. That's the chiddush of that word, in pronunciation at least. There are some additions. Basically, this Hey is its own letter. So the question is here, why are they separating the Lamed from Hashem's name? Like I said, it seems to be that's the text that Rabbeinu Tam and Rashi had. And that has a unique symmetry that 4 letters over here and 4 letters over there. That seems to work. But is that the way it's supposed to be? Is that the way it's in the Torah? In the Torah, the word is Kodesh, its own word, and Lashem is its own word. Look over here in the Koran. Where's that word Hal Hashem occur? Notice here they put a space between the Hey and the Hashem, seeming to indicate that this is exceptional. This Hey is its own word. But other than that, you don't have single letter words in the Torah. The shortest word is what? 2 letters. And sometimes you even have a whole string of 2-letter words, right? So this is complicated. What does it say in the Gemara over here? I want to just see something about the Girsa. Perhaps Rambam is a different Girsa. I don't know. Still looked this up earlier, but we were learning something else. It says here. Yeah, Kodesh Lamed Lamata. Our Girsa of the Gemara has it like Rashi and Tosfos. Okay, so I guess it's supposed to be. We'll leave this at Tzarchiyun. So how is the seat supposed to look? What? So you could do it. We have all the different shitas over here. This is why they put this as Rabbeinu Tam over there, Kodesh Lamed. Okay. There's another opinion over here that you could do it like that. Pass this around so everybody could see it. The 4 different shitas: the Tosfos shita, the Rabbeinu Tam way. There's a way to read it. What?
Like all in one line, but the Kodesh La is like smaller.
Or slightly lower and the Hashem is higher. I like the idea, just do it like plain, like they said. The testimony is like the Rambam says afterwards, write it as is on one line. You could do it that way. Why would you do it that way? That seems the most normal way, because that's what it says in the Torah. It doesn't have an awkwardness to it. I don't know. How do you do this, by the way? How do you make a tzitz have these letters sticking out of it? Did anybody ever work gold? Anybody hear a goldsmith?
Can you just like imprint it? Like you have a I forget what it's called, but mold? No, not a mold.
Okay.
Like rectangle, the thing that they use for printing. At least they used to use for printing.
Okay, so you can bang it out.
And
Yeah. Va'otiyot boltot lefanav. Chofer otiyot me'acharav. You do it from the backside. V'hu mudbak al shava ad shebolet. You stick the thing in wax. The front side that's going to be exposed is actually in soft wax. By the way, we're not talking about paraffinic wax. We're talking about beeswax, the wax they had in the olden days. So if you would start banking it out, you might bang too far and crack the metal. So you have to put like a buffer of wax as you're doing this. That's the Rambam's method. And the Ravid jumps on him here and says, there's a better way. People know metal can do this without doing this whole wax thing. If you know what you're doing, it's an easy thing. What does the Ravid say there, Yoni? Can you read what the Ravid says there?
About
Meshava. Rambam says there. Yeah. Oh, give it to me. I think I made a note there. Oh, yeah. We're on the wrong page. Okay. It says here, Chofer Lotiot Omar Avraham, Eino Chofer Elam Makah Bidfus. He hits it with the diffuse, like you're saying, a stamp type of thing. Surado Otiot Be'acharav Adsho Otiot Bolatot Milafanav. You can just bang it through until it shows up on the other side. Umidubak Bishava Shamar, this whole thing with sticking it to wax that he mentioned, ain't no klum. You don't need to do that. What?
You got a stamp. You want the stamp for metal. Your metal's like on an anvil. Whack it.
And flatten it. Don't do it on an anvil. The wax is to hold it to make sure you don't hit it too far out.
No, but if you wanted to punch out letters, a stamp, what would you put the seats on? Like,
I don't know. I don't know.
no, if it's a flat surface.
It's not. You don't put it on a flat surface. You put it on a surface. It's like when you get the massage. So if you want to be flat on your face for the massage, there's like a hole in the table where you can stick your face. I know we used to have a massage table, so that's how you do it. You do something that holds it up that from the sides, but the part that's getting hit down, there's nothing directly beneath it. Okay. Yes, we inherited a massage table with our house. It's kind of funny. Okay. It says here, Vunakuv b'shtei ktsotav. It also has holes at the two edges. Uftil tchelet lamata mimenu nichnas minekev lenekev. And under it, you put this ptil tchelet. How thick? Whatever it is, whatever does the job. Kadei shien nikshar b'ftil keneged ha'oref. So that you could tie it with teal and it would stay opposite. You know, the teal is opposite the back of his head. The oref is this backside. And they show you two different shitas. Rashi's way of tying the teal and the Rambam way of tying the teal. The Rashi way is more complicated. It has more holes. And that brings us to the end here. Any questions? Very interesting. The tzitz is an amazing thing. Well,
Obviously there are, but it matters exactly how to play.
it doesn't seem to be. They just understood it differently. And like I said, there are all these machlokas that we're going to have to find answers to if we want to do this right. Because you can't just say, oh, pick Rashi's way over Rambam's. You know, there's sometimes they reflect positive traditions. Sometimes they have different proofs to what they were saying. I don't know. That's why we have to discuss these things. We have to have more discussions. And like we said, Rabbi Ari Kaplan said, ultimately you'll decide. You have a Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin decides. Whatever they say goes. It doesn't really matter if it's once upon a time Machlokas, Rashi, Rambam. That's the Torah Sheba'al Peh. Whatever the Sanhedrin decides, that's it. That's why it's a critical factor in or a prerequisite for having the temple back. Okay, everybody have a good night, good Shabbos. I'm saying goodbye to the people online.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.